I never planned to talk about this. Honestly, I thought I'd take this whole story to my grave. But something about tonight, maybe the silence of my crappy studio apartment, maybe the way the streetlights outside flicker like they're glitching, made me open my laptop and finally write it all down. If someone had told me a year ago that the most defining chapter of my life would start with a woman 10 years older than me telling me I looked lost, I would have laughed. I wasn't lost. At least, that's what I kept telling myself. Turns out I was wrong about a lot more than that. I guess I should start with a little context. I'm 24, born and raised in a small town in northern Washington. One of those places where everyone knows everyone, where you can predict every police siren because there are only 2 patrol cars, and where gossip spreads faster than rain in October. My life at that point was predictable, not in a bad way, just in a way that didn't leave room for surprises. I worked at a local hardware store, the kind of place filled with dusty aisles, creaky floors, and regulars who complain about prices but still buy the same screws every week. I wasn't miserable, but I definitely wasn't excited about anything. My routine was painfully consistent. Work, gym, microwave dinner, Reddit, sleep, repeat. I had friends. Well, friends, meaning the guys I'd known since school who still hung around the same dive bar every Friday, talking about the same old girls and the same old plans they'd never follow through on. I didn't hate it, but I felt like I was stuck in someone else's life. Like the real one I was supposed to live was delayed somewhere along the way. Then came her. I met her on a Thursday. Funny how I remember that. Thursdays in our town are the slowest days. No deliveries, no contractors loading up, no weekend DIY warriors. It was raining, the type of cold drizzle that feels like the world is tired of being awake. My manager, Rick, had gone to lunch early, leaving me alone behind the counter. I was scrolling through inventory logs, half asleep, when the door chime rang. She walked in soaked, shaking water from her hair, wearing a dark green coat that somehow made her look like she stepped out of another world. She wasn't trying to look dramatic. She just naturally carried this calm confidence that filled the room before she even said a word. Her hair was tied up messily, the kind of messy that looks intentional. And the first thing I noticed, before her eyes, before her voice, was the way she scanned the store like she already knew what she was looking for, but didn't mind taking her time finding it. When she reached the counter, she gave me this small, tired smile. Not flirtatious, not polite, just real. "Do you have any charcoal starter fluid?" she asked. Her voice was warm, deeper than I expected, like someone who doesn't rush her sentences. "It's aisle 6, I said. "I can show you if you want." She gave me a look I still remember perfectly, half amused, half curious. "Lead the way." We walked through the aisles, and I tried not to stare at her. She didn't seem like someone from here. Not the usual stressed-out moms or grumpy retirees or guys buying things they don't need. She moved with a kind of certainty, like she carried her whole life in her posture, and it was heavier than she let on. When we reached the shelf, she picked up a bottle and sighed. "I'm hosting a dinner tonight. Power went out at my place, so I'm improvising," she said. Then she paused. "You look like someone who doesn't mind improvising. You local?" That caught me off guard. No one ever asked me anything beyond price check. "Or do you have this in medium?" Yeah, I said. "Born here." She smiled again, softer this time. "Thought so. I'm Alex." Alex. A simple name, but something about the way she said it felt like she was handing me a secret. I told her mine. And somehow, in that tiny, fluorescent-lit aisle between lighter fluid and bug spray, everything in my life shifted a few degrees off its axis. If our first meeting felt like a shift, then what happened next felt like the universe giving that shift a shove. After she paid for the charcoal fluid, I expected her to leave. People come and go. That's how it works. But she lingered near the exit, tapping the bottle lightly against her palm like she was debating something. When she finally turned back to me, her hair still dripping rain onto the floor, she asked a question I would replay in my mind for months. "Are you doing anything tonight?" Just like that. Casual. Direct. No hesitation. I froze. It wasn't like women, especially older, confident, put-together women, asked me things like that. Hell, my dating life in general was more, "I guess we can hang out if nothing better comes up, then are you free?" And yet there she was, looking at me like the answer mattered. No, not really," I said, immediately regretting how hopelessly available I sounded. She laughed, not at me, but in a way that made me feel like I'd said something endearing instead of pathetic. "I'm having a few people over," she said. Well, I was. But the power situation messed it up, and now I'm down to 2 confirmed guests. If you want, swing by. I could use an extra pair of hands, and it seems like you could use a break from whatever this is. She gestured vaguely around the store. I should have said no. I didn't know her. She didn't know me. And small towns don't exactly treat spontaneous choices kindly. But something in the way she spoke, confident but not pushy, warm but not sugary, pulled me in. She scribbled her address on the back of a receipt and handed it to me. 7:30. If you show up, great. If not, still great. And then she was gone. The rest of my shift felt like I was floating. Every time I glanced at the receipt, a weird rush went through me. Nerves, excitement, disbelief. I spent the next 3 hours overthinking everything. What to wear, whether it was weird, whether it was some kind of multi-level marketing setup disguised as a dinner invitation. When the clock finally hit 7, I stood in front of my closet realizing I had nothing remotely impressive. Small-town fashion wasn't exactly runway material. I settled on a clean black t-shirt and the least worn pair of jeans I owned. Her house was on the edge of town, tucked behind tall fir trees. The driveway curved like it belonged to a place much nicer than anything around here. When I parked, there were only 2 cars outside, one sedan and one old truck. For a moment, I considered driving away. I even reached for the gear shift. But then the porch light flicked on, like she'd been watching for me. Inside, the house smelled like something roasting, garlic, herbs, and maybe lemon. The kind of smell that makes you realize you've been eating microwave meals for way too long. I knocked, and she opened the door almost immediately, her hair now dry and loosely curled, wearing a navy sweater that somehow made her look both relaxed and intimidating. "You came," she said, and for reasons I still don't fully understand, it felt like an achievement. She led me inside, and I quickly realized the 2 confirmed guests she mentioned weren't friends. They were neighbors, an older couple who spent the entire time arguing about whether or not their new roof was sagging. She kept exchanging amused glances with me every time one of them raised their voice, like we shared an inside joke. Around 9, the couple finally left, practically yelling their goodbyes. When the door shut, the house fell quiet in a way that made my pulse jump. "Well," she said, leaning against the doorway to the kitchen, "I'm glad you came. I thought you'd back out." "I almost did," I admitted. She smiled, not surprised. "Most people do." And then she tilted her head, studying me. "Want to stay a little longer? I could use some company." That was the moment the night changed. Not dramatically, not like in movies, but in a subtle, irreversible way. Because I said yes. Staying was the easiest yes I'd ever said, but the moment it left my mouth, my heartbeat climbed into my throat. Alex didn't seem fazed. She just nodded like she'd been expecting it and walked toward the kitchen, motioning for me to follow. The house felt different now that it was just the 2 of us, quieter, warmer, almost intimate in a way I wasn't prepared for. She poured 2 glasses of wine, handed me one, and leaned against the counter. The light above us was soft, making shadows stretch across her face in a way that made her look both younger and older at the same time. I had no idea how someone could look so at ease in her own home, like she owned every inch of space she stepped on. "So," she said, swirling her wine, "do you always say yes to strange women inviting you over?" "Only the ones who buy charcoal starter fluid," I said before I could stop myself. She laughed, really laughed this time. It wasn't a polite chuckle or a quick exhale. It was warm and unguarded, and it hit me harder than it should have. "You're funny," she said. "I didn't expect that." "I'm not, usually," I admitted. "You're just easy to talk to." That earned me a quiet, thoughtful look, the kind that made me want to look away but couldn't. We ended up moving to the living room. She lit a couple of candles, said the power finally came back, but she preferred the atmosphere like this. The couch was big and soft, so when I sat on one end and she sat on the other, the distance between us felt intentional. Like she didn't want to crowd me, or maybe she wanted to see if I'd close that gap myself. I didn't. Not yet. For a while, we just talked. It wasn't small talk either. She asked about my job, my family, what I wanted in life. No one ever asked me those things, not seriously. When I told her I wasn't sure what I wanted, she didn't judge me. She just nodded, sipping her wine like uncertainty was a perfectly acceptable answer. "What about you?" I asked. Why'd you move here? You don't fit the town in a good way. She smirked. I'll take that as a compliment. And it's a long story. I've got time. She studied me again, that slight narrowing of her eyes like she was measuring something invisible. Maybe another night, she said. That answer stayed in my head like a loose thread. Around 10:30, rain started again, harder this time, drumming against the roof. The candles flickered, and for a moment the whole room felt suspended in some quiet pocket outside the rest of the world. She tucked her feet under her, holding the glass loosely in her fingers. You remind me of me, she said suddenly. I blinked. What do you mean? Before everything, she said. Before I learned to stop expecting life to give me anything just because I wanted it. She smiled faintly. Before I figured out how to protect myself. I wanted to ask what she meant, but there was something in her tone that warned me not to push. Instead, I said, you seem pretty strong to me. Strong is just another word for tired, she said quietly. That sentence hit the room like a weight. I didn't know what to say back, so I didn't. Sometimes silence says more than anything. At some point she stood, walked to the window, and pulled the curtain aside slightly. The street was dark except for one flickering lamppost. You ever feel like you're meant for something bigger than where you are? She asked without turning around. All the time, I said, but I don't know how to get there. She glanced over her shoulder at me, her expression unreadable. Maybe you're closer than you think. For a moment, the air felt charged, like the night was leaning toward something. But instead of crossing the space between us, she came back to the couch, set her empty glass down, and said, I should get some sleep soon. Long day tomorrow. I nodded, even though a part of me didn't want the night to end. She walked me to the door, standing in the warm glow of the porch light. For a second, it looked like she might say something else, something important. But she just gave me that small, real smile from earlier. Drive safe, she said. And don't disappear. I promised I wouldn't. I didn't realize then how much that promise would end up costing me. I didn't sleep much that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her, standing under the porch light, hair glowing gold at the edges, looking at me like I wasn't just some bored kid from a nowhere town. It was stupid, honestly. I'd known her for a few hours, but something about her stuck to me like static. The next morning, I woke up with that weird mix of excitement and confusion twisting in my chest. I told myself I wouldn't text her, mostly because I didn't have her number. All I had was her address scribbled on that receipt. I kept it in my jacket pocket, folded so many times it was starting to wear at the creases. I tried to act normal at work, but even Rick noticed something was off. At one point, he squinted at me over a stack of paint cans and said, You're smiling. It's creepy. Cut it out. I hadn't realized I was smiling. Around noon, the door chime rang, and I didn't even look up until I heard her voice. Busy day? My head snapped up so fast I probably looked like I'd pulled a muscle. Alex was standing at the counter, hair pulled into a ponytail, wearing a brown leather jacket that made her look like she'd stepped out of a movie scene. She smiled when she saw my expression. Didn't expect to see me again? She asked. Honestly, I hadn't. Not that soon. Yeah? No? Hi. Smooth. Really smooth. She laughed softly and placed a small paper bag on the counter. I brought you something. For me. I stared at the bag like it might explode. Relax. It's not a bomb. She pushed it toward me. Inside were 2 sandwiches from a cafe across town, 1 turkey pesto, 1 some kind of veggie thing with goat cheese. You didn't eat dinner last night, she said. At least I didn't see you eat. And you look like the type who forgets lunch, too. I don't forget, I said. I just postpone. That's not better, she said, amused. We ate together in the back room. It was small, cluttered, and smelled faintly like WD-40 and dust. She didn't seem to mind. She told me about her day, meetings, clients, things I didn't totally understand because she'd only vaguely mentioned her job. Something to do with real estate staging, interior design, consulting, it all blended together. But the way she talked about it made it sound important. At one point, she asked, Are you free after work? My brain short-circuited. Yeah. Why? I want to show you something. She said it lightly, but her eyes held something heavier. What is it? You'll see. Before leaving, she touched my arm. Just barely, fingertips grazing the sleeve of my shirt. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't flirty. But it lingered in my mind long after she walked out. After work, I drove to her place again. This time, there were no other cars. No dinner smells. No neighbors. Just the quiet hum of her porch light and the rhythm of my heartbeat in my ears. She opened the door before I even knocked, like she'd been waiting behind it. "Come on," she said. "We're not staying here." She led me to her car, a black SUV with spotless leather seats and a faint smell of citrus. "Where are we going?" I asked as she pulled out of the driveway. "You'll see," she repeated, a small smile on her lips. We drove to the outskirts of town, past the fields, past the lumber mill, past everything familiar. The sky was pale blue fading into orange. She pulled off onto a gravel road that led up a hill I'd never bothered to explore. At the top, she parked. The view stretched out for miles. Pine trees, rooftops, distant highway lights flickering like fireflies. "This," she said quietly, "is where I go when I need to remember who I am." I didn't know what to say. The view was stunning, sure, but the way she said it, soft, vulnerable, made my chest tighten. "Why show me?" I asked. She leaned against the hood of the car, arms folded, watching the fading sun. "Because," she said after a long pause, "you're easier to be around than most people. And because I think you understand more than you pretend to." A breeze picked up, carrying the scent of pine and something colder. I stood next to her, letting the silence fill the space between us. Somewhere in that quiet, she said my name. Softly, like she was testing the way it felt. When I turned to her, she didn't look away. "I don't know what this is," she said, "but I don't want to push you away from it." I should have said something. Anything. But the word stuck. So I did the only thing my body seemed capable of. I stepped just a little closer. Not touching. Not yet. But close enough for her to feel it. And she didn't move away. We stayed on that hilltop longer than I expected. Long enough for the sun to disappear and the cold to settle into our clothes. But neither of us said anything about leaving. There was something about the silence between us that didn't feel empty. It felt intentional, like we were both waiting for something neither of us was brave enough to start. Alex finally pushed off the hood of the car and exhaled slowly, her breath forming a faint cloud in the air. "Come on," she said. "You'll freeze out here." On the drive back, she kept one hand on the steering wheel and the other resting on her thigh, tapping lightly to a song I didn't recognize. Streetlights flashed across her face, revealing small things, tiny freckles under her eyes, a faint scar near her jawline, the way she bit her lip when she was thinking. I caught myself staring more than I should have, but she didn't seem to mind. When we pulled into her driveway, she didn't immediately get out. Neither did I. The car hummed quietly, lights casting soft shadows across the dashboard. She finally spoke first. "I want you to come inside," she said. "But only if you're comfortable." It wasn't seductive. It wasn't suggestive. It was careful, deliberate, like she was giving me the chance to choose, not just follow momentum. "I'm comfortable," I said. Walking into her house this time felt different. Last time it was warm and inviting, but this time it felt heavier, like stepping into something intimate, something that could shift everything if we let it. She hung her jacket, kicked off her boots, and motioned for me to follow her into the living room. The candles from the previous night were still on the shelf, melted unevenly. She lit only one, its glow pooling across the table. "I don't usually invite people into my space like this," she said, sitting on the couch. "Why me?" She hesitated, not dramatically, just long enough for me to catch the flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. "Because you don't look at me like you want anything from me," she replied. "People your age look at me differently." I sat at the opposite end of the couch, mirroring last night without meaning to. "How do they look at you?" "Like I'm a checkpoint," she said. "A challenge. A milestone. Someone they want to impress or win over. Not someone they actually want to understand." "And I don't?" I asked. "No," she said, leaning back against the cushions. "You look at me like you're trying to figure out who I am, not what you can get out of me." I didn't have a good answer to that, mostly because she was right. She tucked one leg underneath her and shifted a little closer. Not enough to touch, but close enough to feel her warmth. "You have this way of listening," she said. "It's unexpected. I like hearing you talk." She smiled faintly, almost shyly. It surprised me, how someone so confident could still look shy. She reached out then, not abruptly, not nervously, just reached across the small space and gently placed her hand on mine. Her fingers were warm, soft, steady. "Is this okay?" she asked. I nodded. "Yeah." We stayed like that for a while, our hands resting together between us. My heart was pounding hard enough that I was sure she could feel the pulse through my palm. But she didn't pull away. She traced slow circles on my knuckles with her thumb, a simple gesture that felt more intimate than anything else could have. "Can I tell you something?" she asked, eyes fixed on her hands. "Anything. I haven't let anyone in for a long time," she admitted. "Not fully. Not emotionally. And I'm not saying this is anything, or that we're anything. She exhaled shakily. "You make me feel like I don't have to be guarded all the time." My throat tightened. "You don't have to be guarded with me." Her eyes lifted, meeting mine in the dim candlelight. There was vulnerability there. Real, raw vulnerability. The kind that doesn't show itself unless someone feels truly safe. She leaned in slightly, not enough to turn it into something else, but enough for me to feel the meaning behind it. "I'd like to believe that," she whispered. Her hand squeezed mine gently. "I really would." Then she let go, not abruptly, but with a kind of reluctant softness. "I should get some rest," she said, standing. I stood too. She walked me to the door again, but this time when she opened it, she hesitated. "Will I see you tomorrow?" she asked. "Yes." Her shoulders eased, just a little. "Good," she whispered. Then she closed the door softly behind me. It wasn't until I got to my car that I realized my hands were trembling. I woke up the next morning with this strange mix of calm and adrenaline humming through my chest. Every detail from the night before replayed on a loop. The hilltop, the candlelit living room, her hand in mine. Nothing had technically happened, but it felt like everything had shifted anyway. Like some door had quietly opened between us, and now every moment carried weight. I got to work early, mostly because I couldn't sit still at home. I swept the store twice, reorganized the screws aisle for no reason, and tried, and failed, to look normal. Rick noticed immediately. "You're doing that weird smiling thing again," he said, dropping a box near my feet. "Stop it. Customers will think we sell happiness." I didn't even deny it. The truth was too obvious. Around noon, the door chime rang. I looked up out of instinct, not expecting her this time. But there she was, Alex, standing in the entrance with her sunglasses perched on her head and her hair falling loosely around her shoulders. She wasn't carrying a bag this time. She wasn't even pretending to browse. She walked straight to me. "Hey," she said softly. "Hey, you free later?" My heart kicked hard. "Yeah, of course." "Good. I want to talk about something." Her voice wavered slightly. Not much, but enough for me to catch it. "Is everything okay?" I asked. She hesitated. "I'm not sure." Before I could ask more, a couple walked in loudly arguing over the right paint shade, and Alex stepped back. "I'll text you the address," she said. "It's not my house. Somewhere else." "Okay." She gave me a small, fleeting smile before she left. It didn't settle me at all. If anything, it made the tension coil tighter in my chest. The rest of the day crawled by. Every tick of the clock made the room feel smaller. By the time my shift ended, I practically ran to my car. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed. "Alex, 49, Orchard Road. Back entrance." I knew that area. A quiet residential street lined with old houses and tall maple trees. But I didn't know why she'd want to meet there, or why she specified the back entrance. When I pulled up, the house looked empty. Lights off, no cars in the driveway. It wasn't abandoned, just private. The kind of place people rented short-term or used as a workspace. I walked around the side, gravel crunching under my shoes. The back door opened before I made it halfway up the steps. Alex stood there in a gray sweater and jeans, hair loosely tied back. No makeup, no careful posture. She looked younger, but also more worn out, like she hadn't slept well. "Thanks for coming," she said. "Of course. What's going on?" She stepped aside, letting me in. The place was sparsely furnished, just a couch, a table, and a couple of boxes stacked in the corner. It didn't look like a home, more like a temporary space. She sat on the couch, but didn't look at me right away. Her hands were clasped tightly in her lap. "I need to tell you something before we go any further," she said finally. "I should have told you earlier, but I didn't know how." My chest tightened. "Okay." She looked up then, eyes steady but full of something heavy. "I'm not married," she said, but I wasn't completely single either. The room felt still, like even the air paused. "What do you mean?" I asked carefully. "I ended something recently. Or, I'm trying to." She swallowed. "It wasn't serious at first. Then it got messy and complicated. And then I met you." Something sharp twisted in my stomach. Not pain, exactly, but something close. Are you still with him? I asked quietly. No, not really. He thinks we're still figuring things out. I've been trying to end it for weeks. But he doesn't take no easily. I stayed quiet, letting her talk. I didn't expect you, she said. You weren't supposed to happen. And now I'm afraid you'll think I led you on or lied. I took a slow breath. Why tell me now? Because you deserve honesty. And because, she exhaled shakily. Because I like you more than I planned to. The words hit me in a way I wasn't prepared for. She continued, voice softer. But if this changes things for you, if you want distance, I'll understand. I sat next to her, leaving only a few inches between us. It doesn't change how I feel, I said. Not unless you want it to. Her shoulders loosened, just barely. I don't, she whispered. She looked at me then with this raw, searching expression, like she was trying to see whether I'd pull away. I didn't. Not even a little. I didn't know what to expect when I pulled up in front of her place that evening. Her porch light was on, but the rest of the house was dark, except for a faint glow from the living room window. I turned off the engine and sat there a moment, gripping the steering wheel as if it could anchor me to something solid. The whole day at work, my head was a mess. Every nail I drove felt like it went into my own chest. Every board I cut reminded me of how quickly things can break if you don't measure right. How easy it is to mess up something delicate. When she opened the door, she looked tired. Not angry, just tired. Her hair was pulled back in a loose bun, and she had on an oversized sweatshirt with paint on the sleeves. I knew that sweatshirt. She wore it when she was stressed and trying to distract herself with house projects. Her version of breathing exercises. Hey, she said softly. Hey. My voice cracked like I was 13 again. She stepped aside, and I came in. The house smelled like vanilla candles, something warm and familiar. I saw a half-finished puzzle on the coffee table, 2 mugs, one empty, one untouched, and a blanket thrown across the couch. She'd been restless. We didn't sit right away. We just stood there, the air thick between us. You wanted to talk, she finally said. Yeah. I swallowed. I'm sorry about today. I didn't mean for any of that to happen. She nodded once, cautious. I know you didn't mean to, but it still did. I exhaled hard. I felt like I was losing you. And I panicked. And the way I handled it. I know it wasn't okay. Her eyes softened just a little. Just enough to make something inside me shift. You weren't losing me, she said. You were just scared. And I get that. But when you shut down and push me away, it makes me feel like I don't matter. Hearing her say that punched something deep in my chest. You matter more than you know. I don't always know how to say things the right way. She walked to the couch and sat down, motioning for me to join her. I did, leaving a little space at first because I didn't want to assume anything. She pulled the blanket over her legs and sighed. I've been on this planet longer than you, she said. And I've had people leave. People lie. People tell me I'm too much or not enough. I'm not blaming you for their mistakes. But sometimes things you do hit wounds you don't know about. I nodded slowly. And sometimes I react like a kid who's afraid the only person he trusts is going to disappear. She looked over at me then. A real look. Present. Vulnerable. And I felt something shift again, like the tension in the room settled just a bit. We're both fighting ghosts, she said. Yeah, but I don't want mine to hurt you. We were quiet for a while after that. The kind of quiet that isn't awkward, just necessary. She reached out, pulled the blanket a little more toward me. A small gesture, but it meant everything. Come here, she said finally. I moved closer, and she leaned her head on my shoulder. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a movie moment. Just 2 people trying to breathe at the same rhythm again. I want to do this right, I said quietly. I want to be better at communicating, at not freaking out, at not assuming the worst. She rubbed her thumb lightly over my hand. Then just keep showing up. That's all I need. I nodded, letting the warmth of her touch melt the last bit of panic I'd been holding. I'm not going anywhere, she whispered. And for the first time in a long time, I believed her. Neither am I said. We stayed like that until the candles burned low, until the puzzle pieces sat forgotten, until the silence became something safe again. After the long weekend getaway, I felt something shift between us, subtle but undeniable. Emily had this way of reading me, not just my words, but the spaces in between, the pauses, the things I didn't say. It was a little unnerving, honestly, but in a way that made me want to open up more. She laughed about it, calling me predictably unpredictable, which was one of those phrases that sticks in your head even when you try to forget it. Back in our small town, life resumed its usual rhythm, but now with an undercurrent of something that was both thrilling and terrifying. I started noticing the little things about her that I'd overlooked before. How she'd tap her fingers in rhythm while thinking, the way her eyes would soften when she looked at someone she genuinely cared about, the faint scent of coffee that always lingered on her scarf. Emily had this magnetic presence. It wasn't loud or overbearing, just there, like gravity, quietly pulling everything toward her. One evening, I found myself walking past her favorite diner, the one she dragged me to last summer because she swore their cherry pie was life-changing. I hesitated at the entrance, my stomach doing somersaults for reasons I couldn't quite articulate. She was there, of course, sitting at a corner booth with her laptop open, earbuds in, totally absorbed. I almost turned around, feeling like an intruder, but something in her posture made me stay. "Hey," I said softly, sliding into the seat opposite her. She blinked, a little startled, then smiled, the kind that lights up the room without trying. "Hey," she replied, removing her earbuds. "You didn't call ahead. Thought you might have just vanished like some mysterious small-town ghost." I laughed, rubbing the back of my neck. "Yeah, well, mysterious ghost problems. You know how it is." She rolled her eyes playfully, but didn't argue. Instead, she closed her laptop and leaned back, studying me with that intense curiosity that always made me feel both exposed and safe. "So," she said, tilting her head, "what's going on in that head of yours? You've been distant a little." The words hung in the air. Part of me wanted to shrug, to play it cool, but another part, the part that had been yearning for connection since that first awkward coffee date, spilled out without warning. I told her about my work stress, about my worries for the future, about the little insecurities I never thought I'd share with anyone. And she listened. Not just politely, not just nodding along. She really listened, like my thoughts mattered in some profound way. That night, we stayed until the diner closed, talking, laughing, occasionally falling silent, but never awkwardly. I walked her home under the soft glow of the streetlights, our hands brushing accidentally, then lingering. There was a charged silence as we stood in front of her apartment door. I like this," she said finally, a soft smile playing at her lips. "This us figuring things out slowly." I nodded, unable to find words that didn't sound clumsy. Instead, I leaned in and kissed her, a gentle, tentative kiss that promised patience, curiosity, and maybe something more. She kissed back, and for the first time in weeks, I felt completely grounded, as if the chaotic mess of my life had finally found a quiet center. In the following days, our relationship deepened in small but meaningful ways. We'd grab coffee in the mornings, sometimes linger too long, laughing about inconsequential things. She introduced me to her favorite hiking trail outside town, and we spent hours walking, talking, and occasionally arguing over ridiculous things like which way was up or who could spot the first deer. Yet, life wasn't without complications. Emily had past scars, stories of heartbreak and challenges I couldn't fully understand, and I had my own fears of inadequacy and the looming uncertainty of my 20s. But somehow, in our little shared moments, late-night calls, stolen glances, and slow dances in the living room, we built a fragile, beautiful bridge over the gap between experience and youth, past and present. I realized that with her, life didn't have to be all or nothing. Love wasn't just fireworks or dramatic gestures. It was patience, understanding, and the quiet thrill of someone truly seeing you. And for the first time, I felt like I was learning what it really meant to let someone in, without losing myself in the process. As we fell asleep that night, tangled in blankets and soft murmurs, I knew that the real story wasn't in the grand gestures or the whirlwind romance. It was in the ordinary, beautiful, unexpected moments that made every day with Emily feel like discovering a new favorite song, one that you wanted to play over and over again. I woke up the next morning on her couch, the blanket still over both of us, her head resting on my chest. The sunlight was slipping through the blinds in thin lines, cutting across the coffee table, the puzzle pieces, her half-empty mug. For a moment, I didn't move. I just watched her breathe, slow, steady, peaceful. After everything that happened the day before, seeing her like that felt unreal, like I'd been handed something fragile and priceless, and told not to screw it up. She stirred, lifting her head slightly. Her hair was a mess, and she looked at me with that half-awake softness that made my chest tighten. "Morning," she murmured. "Morning." She smiled, small but real. "We fell asleep here." "Yeah. Guess the universe wanted us to stay close." She didn't tease me for that line. She didn't roll her eyes. She just leaned up and kissed me lightly, the kind of morning kiss that says we're okay. We survived another storm. When she stood to stretch, her sweatshirt lifted just a bit, revealing a sliver of skin, and I swear my heartbeat tripped over itself. She was older, yes. She was experienced, smarter, more grounded. But she was also soft in ways she didn't let most people see. And being someone she trusted enough to fall asleep beside, it meant more than I could say. She walked into the kitchen, and I followed her, watching her tie her hair up again. She took out 2 mugs, filled them with coffee, and handed me one. "So," she said, blowing on hers, "we should probably talk about yesterday. Properly, I mean." I nodded. "Yeah, I want that." She leaned against the counter, crossing her arms loosely, not defensive, just thoughtful. "I care about you a lot," she began. "More than I planned to. More than I expected to. But when things get tense, you shut down or jump to conclusions. And that scares me because I don't want to build something shaky again." I took a slow breath. "I know. And you're right. I'm used to thinking everyone will leave. It's a habit I'm trying to break." She stepped closer. "I don't want to leave. I just need stability. Not perfection, just effort." "I can promise that," I said. "Effort. Real effort. Even when it's uncomfortable." She looked into my eyes for a long second, searching for something. Whatever she found made her shoulders relax. "Good," she whispered. We ate breakfast quietly, scrambled eggs, toast, nothing fancy. The radio played some old 90s song in the background, soft and nostalgic. And every few minutes, she'd reach out and brush her fingers against mine, like she was checking, confirming, grounding herself. Later that afternoon, she suggested we go for a drive. "Just to clear our heads," she said. We ended up taking this long back road outside town, the kind that winds between hills and open fields. She rolled down the windows, letting the wind fill the car, her hair whipping around like she didn't even care. She laughed when it hit her face, and I swear it was one of the most beautiful sounds I'd heard. "Can I ask you something?" she said suddenly, turning down the music. "Yeah. Where do you see this going?" She didn't say it with fear. It wasn't an ultimatum. It was curiosity. Hope. I hesitated, not because I didn't know the answer, but because I wanted to say it right. "I see it going somewhere real," I said. "Somewhere solid. I don't know all the details yet, obviously, but I know I don't want this to be temporary." She smiled, slow but wide. "Good. Because I wasn't looking for temporary either." We stopped at this overlook we'd found by accident, a small dirt pull-off with a view of the valley. She sat on the hood of the car, her legs pulled up, her eyes on the horizon. I sat beside her, and she leaned into me. "You know," she said softly, "you're starting to surprise me." "How?" "In the ways that matter." The wind was cold, but her voice was warm. I wrapped an arm around her, and she didn't just lean in, she melted into it. We stayed there until the sky turned gold. And I realized something. This wasn't just a relationship anymore. It was becoming a life. By the time fall rolled into town, everything between Emily and me had settled into a rhythm that was equal parts comforting and exhilarating. Our relationship wasn't perfect. There were moments of tension, misunderstandings, and the occasional doubt. But the foundation we'd built was strong. We'd learned to communicate in ways I never thought I could with anyone. Honest, open, and sometimes painfully vulnerable. One chilly October evening, she invited me to her apartment with a mysterious smile. "I've got something to show you," she said, holding my hand as we walked inside. The place smelled faintly of cinnamon and old books, and soft indie music filled the background. On the table was a small, carefully wrapped box. "What's this?" I asked, trying to mask my curiosity with casual tone, though my heart was already racing. She shrugged, that playful, confident grin that always made me melt. "Open it." Inside was a handmade scrapbook. Every page was filled with little memories. Polaroid photos of us at the diner, ticket stubs from the movies we went to, sketches of the hiking trails, snippets of conversations we'd had late at night, quotes we'd laughed about. It wasn't fancy. It was raw, intimate, and entirely Emily. I flipped through the pages slowly, overwhelmed by how much thought and care she had poured into this simple gesture. "I made it for us," she said softly, watching my reactions closely. "Because I don't want to forget a single moment, even the tiny ones that seem insignificant. Those are the ones that matter." I couldn't speak for a moment. I just pulled her into a hug, the warmth of her body grounding me in a way I hadn't realized I needed. This is amazing," I whispered, feeling a lump in my throat. "You're amazing." She laughed lightly, brushing her fingers through my hair. "We're amazing," she corrected, teasing but serious at the same time. "Together." That night, as we curled up on the couch reading through the scrapbook together, I realized how far we'd come. From that awkward first coffee date to secret glances, stolen kisses, and shared adventures, we'd built something that felt rare, something that wasn't just about lust or infatuation, but trust, intimacy, and genuine companionship. A few weeks later, Emily suggested we take a spontaneous trip to a small coastal town nearby. Just the two of us, no distractions. We drove through winding roads, laughing, sharing stories, and getting lost more times than I could count. The night we arrived, we walked along the deserted beach under a sky so full of stars it felt unreal. She grabbed my hand, squeezing it tightly. "I used to think I'd never find someone who could understand me like this," she said quietly, her eyes reflecting the starlight. "And then, you happened. I don't know how, but you happened." I stopped walking and turned to her. My heart felt heavy with the weight of everything I wanted to say. "Emily, you make me want to be better. You make me feel like I'm enough, even when I doubt myself." She smiled, leaning in to kiss me softly. That kiss wasn't just affection. It was a promise, a vow that we were in this together, fully and completely. For the first time, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be, with someone who truly saw me, flaws and all. Over the following months, life kept moving, sometimes fast, sometimes slow, but we faced it together. The arguments didn't feel threatening, the challenges didn't feel insurmountable, and the mundane days felt full of joy. Every morning, I woke up next to Emily and thought about how lucky I was to have found someone who could simultaneously challenge me, teach me, and love me with a depth I hadn't known existed. And now, looking back on the journey, I realized that this story isn't about an age gap or small-town quirks. It's about connection, trust, and the little moments that define a relationship. From tentative first glances to midnight conversations, from awkward fumbling to absolute comfort, Emily and I built something timeless, something real. As I sit here, thinking about how far we've come, I can't help but smile. Because the story doesn't end here. It's just the beginning of everything. The shared mornings, the laughter, the tears, the quiet nights, the adventures yet to come. And I know one thing for certain. Whatever life throws at us, we'll face it together. Because love isn't about perfection. It's about showing up every single day for someone who sees you, even when you don't see yourself. And in Emily, I found that person. For me, for us, it's the start of forever.